Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Thrunite Catapult V6. This is an interesting light, but actually it's not all that substantially different than a light I've reviewed before. This is the Thrunite TC20, and my basic understanding, looking at these lights and just kind of playing around with them, experimenting, is that from here back, these lights are basically the same thing. They're having a very similar handle, they're having a very similar body, etc. And so as a result, substantially, they are similar. So I'm going to treat this as a quick review. But actually, first, before I go into that, I need to, in the interest of full disclosure, reveal that this was sent to me directly by the manufacturer for as a review sample. So, keep that in mind as you're going ahead and doing this, or as watching that is. So we got to know that this is going to be one of the better QC'd ones ever. I've done my best to not let that affect my my judgments over it all. That doesn't even make sense. Whatever. But size comparison-wise, first off, here it is against the Thrunite TC20, which is a light that I like a lot. I like this light so much that I bought a second one for my house because I think it's a really good choice. Here it is against a standard 18650 battery. Whoops. Here it is against the standard 18650 battery, a standard AA battery, a CR123 battery, well, RCR in this case, and here it is against a Spyderco Delica. Hey, tradition's sake, right? And then finally, a quick note. This is using a weird proprietary charging pack sort of thing. It's a 26650 battery. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not a weird proprietary charging pack at all. It is a 26650 battery. You don't see them very often, and this comes included with the light, but that is something you're going to want to keep in mind. This is not something where you can just drop an 18650 in that you may already have around. Unless you've got one of these guys handy, this is pretty much the battery that belongs with it. But it's USB rechargeable, so whatever. So anyways, on that note, we are going to make this, like I said, a very quick review and just mostly focus on the differences between this guy here and the TC20, which I've already done a full review on. Overall, the biggest difference here, and really the way to consider this light, is that this here is a thrower light. I mean, if we take a look here, this guy absolutely 100% is designed to put a lot of light downrange. That's the only goal of this light, is to take a whole crap load of lumens and put them very far away from you. And as a result, if we take a look here at the beam pattern, if I do this from just off camera, you can see that there is just one concentrated dot, and it is so bright that my finger is actually getting hot as we're doing that. On the turbo mode, as opposed to this, the TC20 at the same position here, puts a much more concentrated, or less concentrated field of light down on the table. This is a really important distinction. The difference between something that is very floody, this guy will light up the whole area in front of you, whereas this guy will only light up a very, very specific area. Sure, there's some overshoot. The area in front of you will get a little brighter, but this guy is really designed to put very concentrated light down the field. And so that's kind of the biggest thing, and that's in some ways the thing that's best about it, is that it is really, really specialized. It is not a very large light, but it is very, very throwy, and that's really nice. The other thing that I kind of like about this guy is the fact that it is relatively compact still. A lot of those throwing kinds of lights, because they require these big kinds of optics like this guy that you're seeing on the front here, are going to be, well, frankly, a little bit harder to work with, a little bit more of a pain in the neck, and much, much larger. But this guy actually isn't all that large in terms of its actual diameter here. The total diameter of this light comes in at like 2.29 inches here. Not terribly bad, and then the actual body of the light comes in at 1.27 inches. You know, look, for a thrower, this is quite reasonable. And so they call this guy the mini thrower on their website, and that's absolutely 100% what it is. Otherwise, honestly, it is substantially the same as the TC20. It has the same interface, where if you double-click on, you get turbo. If you single-click, or if you hold, you get some kind of a moonlighty mode. If you single-click, it has a mode memory, and then it just cycles through. It's a very good interface in that it's very simple, very easy. I do miss the continuous adjust, but basically I'm just repeating myself from the DC20 review. The LED, in terms of brightness, it's really kind of hard to compare these guys because, well, at some level, a very throwy light puts out a lot more concentrated light, but it doesn't feel, it feels differently bright. But the thing is, this is a very, very good thrower. It puts out plenty of brightness. They say it's 1700 lumens on turbo mode, but basically, it's very, very sufficient. That's a weird thing to say, but I have trouble gauging these kinds of things. Because it'll work. It'll do the trick. It'll put a lot of light down range very, very quickly. If you're looking for a raccoon in a tree, this is a great choice for it, and it's plenty bright enough for that. Run times are similar to the TC20, even though they are using a very different LED, as you can probably see inside there. So there's that. And then it is using USB recharge still, which I consider to be a great feature. This is sort of a killer app for a modern flashlight because it means that you don't need a charger that will charge your weird 26650 batteries. Instead, all you need is a USB cord, and you've got one of those around. And so, much like the this guy here, which has a very, very similar sort of approach, that's great. To me, the only downsides on this guy are a couple of details. First off, it is bigger than the TC20 by a reasonably substantial margin. I mean, anytime you put a big throwy optic on this guy, you're going to get something that's bigger. That's a simple fact of life. And so this really, this guy can go into a pocket. It's a little big, but it absolutely can. Whereas this guy is just a little bit too big and awkward to do that. It ships with a sheath. Here, I'll show you the little sheath here. So, that's not a big deal, but it is absolutely something I'm not a fan of. That that you are getting this big increase in size there. The other thing I want to highlight here is that, because like I said, there aren't that many differences, and this is a great light, is that a really super throwy light is not going to be for everybody. If you were just looking for a flashlight for general use, you want the TC20. Absolutely 100%. But if you were looking for something very specifically to project a lot of light in a very concentrated area, that's what this is for. But for everyday carry, for what most people are after, generally speaking, having this kind of super bright light that's very, very spotty is just not going to be the best choice. Navigating a dark room with this guy is honestly not particularly enjoyable. I mean, it'll do it, and frankly, it's bright enough that you point it up at the ceiling and you're okay. But this is just a much better choice. This kind of a floody optic is just a much better choice, I think, for most everyday carry uses. And so this is a really, really specialized tool. And that's the biggest thing that, to me at least, is a negative, is that this is a specialized tool that I don't really have a strong use for. All of my flashlight use cases are general purpose navigation, illumination kinds of things. If I were out doing search and rescue, this might be an absolutely great choice. But for me, the TC20 is absolutely going to be the better tool. So this has been kind of a weird review because in many ways, like I said, the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of the TC20 are basically there. The run times are about the same. Everything else is fine. The big difference is the change in the optic here, and that really makes this a different tool with a different purpose, even when the rest of it is substantially the same. So, there you go. That's the final conclusion here. For most people, I think you're absolutely going to want the TC20, which is just going to be a more practical everyday light. But I think if you're really looking for something throwy, you're looking for something compact, and you want some of the other nice features like the USB charger, the interface, etc., the Catapult V6 is going to be an absolutely excellent choice for you. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful and throwy rest of your day. Bye now.